Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine War Update Extra video where I give you the juicy nuggets and tidbits to get your teeth into, to give you a greater understanding and more information on the conflict in Ukraine. So much to talk about today. I want to talk about the claim of a Ukrainian war crime. I'm going to leave that to the end. I might not have to do that. I might just do a separate little video for that because this might go on too long otherwise. So where should we start? Let's look at the claim I made earlier that the Russians are running out of missiles. Now, those are cruise missiles and these big ballistic missiles. There have been these claims for a long time that they are running short, and that's why they're not hitting Ukraine so much. And they're using a wide range of missiles and missiles that aren't really apt for the task. Now, we must remember that Russia don't just have one centralized warehouse where they keep all of these missiles. I was thinking about this. I was thinking, right, because the stats I'm going to show you make it look like there's still quite a lot of missiles. So what does it mean for Russia to be running out? And I guess they are going to all of their ships around the world, all their naval vessels and all their submarines, and at their air bases all around the world and in Russia, are going to have stocks of these missiles, right? So it's not like one central warehouse that then starts running low. Running low might look like a different thing in different contexts, as they're pulling these missiles from places where they might be used, for defense against something that might go on over here. Okay, we'll pull it from over there when we think that's going to be safe, and we're going to put it from this base and that base. But they still actually have quite a lot of missiles. So on paper, Russia have got a load of missiles, but in reality, considering what they are using those missiles for and the defensive capabilities, and just in case there's a war here and a war there, or this happens, they need a certain number of missiles. So as you dip below that, you can see that as running out. However, they still got hundreds of these things kicking about. So I'm giving you that preamble before I show you what the Ukrainian Defense Minister, Alexei Reznikov, has now just released in terms of what numbers they have. What's interesting here, so you have the stock, but you have what's been produced as well. So they are still actually able to make some of these, or have been able to make some of these. Talk about sanctions stopping them building things. Well, according to the Ukrainians, they still are, or still at least historically during this conflict, have been able to build some. How many they've used, how many use, or in this, as they say, wasted, how many they have remaining, and the percentage they have remaining of what they have had. So when you look at Iskander, so these are decent cruise missiles. They had 900 in stock. They've made another 48. They've used 829. That's a massive proportion. There's a massive number of Iskander missiles, leaving them only 119, which is 13%. So when you look at something like that, 13% of their stocks is not a lot, because if they were to go to war with NATO in 2 months' time, and they only had 119 Iskander missiles, that doesn't put them in a good position. They've got quite a lot of these 3M. So these are, what are these? Ground launched. So these are launched from the ground, these are launched from the sea, and these are launched from the air. Okay, so when you're talking about what can be launched from the ground, they have actually used most of their ground launch cruise missiles. They've got these Onyx, and I don't know those actually. I'm going to have to look into them in a second. They've got these S300s, which are supposed to be ground to air, but a secondary mode can be used ground to ground, but they're not very accurate, or not as accurate. They've got shed loads of these, 8,000. They've used 1,020 already, but they've got a huge amount of stock left, and that's why we keep seeing these sort of the usage of S300s in this secondary mode. From the sea, they've got 500. They've built 120. These are Caliber cruise missiles. 229 left. They'll be used predominantly from the Black Sea fleets. They will be used from the Black Sea Fleet, and they'll probably be getting them from ships around the world somehow back into Russia, and then shipped to down to the Black Sea, or from stocks existing elsewhere. Or I'm not 100% sure. I'm kind of speculating here, but they've got 229 of these left. They have used 391, which is a lot of caliber, and again, not huge stocks. When it comes to air launched missiles, they have again quite a few stocks, although it's mainly less than half of what they had. And they've got this KH-47M2. They've got but it looks like they got 73% of them, but they only had 43 and 16 made. So that leaves 43 left. Yes, they have hundreds of these, but actually, I guess the thing here is that they struggle to use these as much, or they fly into Russian territory and kind of launch them from a distance. And these will have varying ranges and varying accuracies. But when it comes to ground-based systems, it certainly seems that they're lacking in the Iskander, which is one of their more prominent missiles. Let's have a little look at the 3M55 Onyx. So just a quick look into this. So this is the Onyx missile, and 3M55 is the basic designation by their missile sort of directorate. It is this basic one with the 600-kilometer range, 370-mile range. And they have, obviously they can use that. It was, I think it's initially a ship missile to hit ships, but it can obviously be used to hit ground targets, and it has been used to hit equipment near Odessa, for example, back in May. So they've got quite a few of those left, 347 of them. And then we come down to, all those others. So just a little bit of information about the Onyx. So the question is, does this look like they're running out? I mean, if you count all of these missiles up, they have, well, let's forget the S300, because part of what I've been saying is they're using the S300 because they're running out of these other ones. So you start adding all of these up, and they've got, that's a good 1,000 missiles there. But I guess if you add this up, they've got, several thousand. So they are going to be under 50% of their stock of missiles. Does that constitute running out? What's their intention? What are their ideas for how many they need to keep? So it might be that, for all intents and purposes, getting down to 30% of their missiles is completely running out, because they absolutely say, it might be that the Russian command say, we cannot go below 30% because we absolutely need 30% in case we get into any other engagement. It's not all about Ukraine. We can't exhaust our entire armed forces and our entire defensive capability on Ukraine, because if we do that, then goodness me, Western Samoa can attack us and win. So they have to have some kind of stocks still within Russia, within their fleets and in their air fleets, to be able to do the job that they're supposed to do. So anyway, that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what you think about whether they are indeed running out, or whether that shows that they still have an awful lot left in stock to be able to use. Right, I said I'd talk to you a little bit about this. So this was a thread about logistics. Well, not about, it's about hitting targets with long-ranged ordnance. The destruction of critical communications headquarters and logistics hubs allowed Ukraine to reduce casualties while it maximized battlefield successes. But how sustainable is this, and what can be improved? If you've been following Kherson and Kharkiv operations, you probably noticed that without supplies, communications, and organized command, Russian front lines collapsed and resulted in retreat. Kharkiv offensive operation as well. That's what that picture is. So despite clear successes, the absence of tactical missiles or deep strike capability weapons, as well as limited number of GMLRS systems, reduces the offensive capabilities of the Ukrainian army and results in casualties that could have been avoided. Let's take a closer look. One, Kherson front logistics hub near Preobrazhenka, in close proximity to Crimea. Destruction of one logistics hub like this can easily cripple multiple brigades. Destruction of multiple logistics hubs can result in the logistics collapse of the entire front. And here you have geolocation providing intelligence for Ukrainians here to say, look, you can hit all this. Oh, no, you can't. You don't have missiles that go far enough. This hub remains unharmed until this day, although it's lost its significance as the enemy moved into a different location. Longer range weaponry would have forced the enemy to push his logistics further away, making it difficult to run both offensive and defensive operations. Even if the area would be still heavily used, Ukraine still has difficulties reaching it. This clearly demonstrates that despite continuous claims from some military experts, HIMARS is clearly not a panacea to all problems. Yeah, HIMARS are great, but it barely reaches Crimea, which starts sort of just over here. This is the Kimburn Spit. This is sort of Kherson, Dnipro River, and the rest of Kherson Oblast, sort of on the south side of the river. A combat vehicle repair facility near Jankoy. This is one I told you about in my update video, map update. While the destruction of HQs and ammo depots might seem obvious, the destruction of maintenance and repair facilities is crucial too, and it denies the ability to restore the combat readiness of mechanized and motorized units. This facility is operational since spring 2022, and it's just one of many. Destruction of such facilities would force Russia to move them deeper into the territory, creating numerous problems for vehicle evacuation, delivery, and spare part cannibalization. 3. Supply depot, another lost opportunity to strike. The enemy was keeping approximately 60 vehicles of different types, armored and cargo trucks, AFVs, etc. Destruction of this base would equal the elimination of one regiment's armor. Once Ukraine got GMLRS with a long enough range, Russians moved the equipment further away, which caused additional logistical hardships. This especially becomes a problem when Russians need to drive hundreds of kilometers daily for purely military or supply operations. To counter that, Russians distribute ammo in small portions and store it separately. This works because the major storage facilities are still outside of the HIMARS range. If they would move them further, Russians would have to drive at least 350 kilometers for an ammo distribution. So if you use long-range ammunition, then the Russians will naturally pull back further. And if they pull back further, not only do they lose stuff as they're hit within that range, but in moving back further, their logistics become even more strained and strenuous and difficult and inefficient. An army without a command chain, communications, fuel, and ammo is not an army, but a lost and hungry mob. They will retreat on their own. If the West will supply Ukraine with the means to strike beyond 200 kilometers, it will create enough pressure to push Russians out of Ukraine. I've been wondering about this. Why don't they do this? Are they really worried about escalation, or is it this kind of theory I've been putting forward about whether, like, giving them just enough as and when they desperately need it is enough to degrade Russia over this long period? Or is there, it could be that, and another reason, maybe they're building up enough long-range missile stocks, literally they're ramping up the construction of these missiles so that they can give Ukraine a whole load of stock all at once. And if they can give that stock all at once, rather than giving them a bunch and then them exhausting that and needing more and keeping on sort of bringing them over and having to build more, if they actually are saying, yeah, we're not going to do that, it's going to escalate, and build up a massive stock, give that all to Ukrainians, and then over like a couple of week period, Ukraine is absolutely obliterate. Because they've got the HIMARS that can shoot the rockets. It's not the actual rocket systems, it's the rockets here. So they've got the systems, just get them built up enough, get the HIMARS all in the right places, and then say, or right, you don't want like one HIMARS to be using it and then to find out about that and then start moving stuff. It wants to be a surprise attack. Wait until you got them all stocked up, and then over a couple of nights, you just absolutely hammer behind the lines. I don't know. Could be. It sounds just what I made up, but it sounds pretty plausible. There is a difference between a victory where you lose a few hundred people per month versus where you lose a few thousand people per month. Multiply that by 12 and see the difference after 1 year. This is a difference that deep strike weapons can make. Weapons that provide Ukraine with deep strike capabilities are not prolonging the conflict, but saving thousands of lives in Ukraine and helping to end this conflict quicker. So exactly, really good thoughts. I'd agree with you completely. Why it's not happened, I guess, we'll find out one day. Here's an infographic of the KIA killed in action foreigners in Ukraine, RIP heroes. 24 Georgians is like the 1,728 Americans percentage of population. We are the small big country. So this is I don't know if the dead strict is actually a Georgian account. So if you multiply that by, population-wise, 24 Georgians is the equivalent of 1,720 Americans for their percentage of population. Just in case, yeah. So these are all done on flags, so it's a little bit difficult. But Georgians 24. That looks like, is that one of the stands, and that's Azerbaijan. I'm pretty sure there. I should know that. Oh, is that Belarus? No, that's Belarus. Sorry, I'm just reading my Cyrillic. That, of course, I know. That might well be Belarusians actually who are fighting for the Ukrainians. US 14, so 14 people have died. Um, and then we come down to UK 4, Azerbaijan, sorry, 9, UK 4, Australia 3, Brazil 3, Canada 3. That is, which one is that? That looks like Colombia 3, and France 3, and then so on and so forth. Anyway, that's quite interesting. But obviously, Georgians have been fighting in Ukraine since 2014, actually, helping the Ukrainians. So they are quite used to that. But that is obviously sad to see. Georgians certainly doing their bit, as well as Belarusians. Um, okay, a quote from The Truth on my yesterday's video. I've not seen it mentioned anywhere, but infection is one of the highest causes of casualties in pre-World War II warfare. When you look at the living conditions the Russian troops face, you can imagine this will become a factor over the winter. About a strong flu or COVID, and Russia could be in big trouble. Of course, Ukraine face the same issue. Germs don't pick sides at all, after all. But when you see the cramped conditions in the mobilized soldiers' camps and the lack of basic equipment, I foresee a major problem. The Russian MOD has even openly talked about deaths of mobilized men even before they even get to Ukraine due to health uh, conditions. A lot of the videos with angry Russian soldiers talk about everyone getting sick. I'm surprised that no commentators are picking up on this. It's not just bombs and bullets that create casualty to war. Absolutely. And I really wanted to look into this. I couldn't find an awful lot. Um, Russia only has a 50% rate of vaccination for COVID. You can bet the regions mobilized troops came from will be less than 50%. I guess now that COVID's mutated to a less virulent strain, it might not be a big problem. However, what I did find was this. The war in Ukraine is fueling antimicrobial resistance. So the war in Ukraine is increasing the spread of antimicrobial resistance, said Dr. Jung, a clinician and researcher on antibiotic resistance at the University of Leipzig. During the World Health Summit on Tuesday. Right now in the hospital, the most resistant infections that we are seeing are people that come from Ukraine and got wounded in battles, treated in field hospitals, and then at some point made it to Germany or to Central Europe, she said. And it's very, very devastating, very concerning as a clinician when you get those lab results. You end up very empty-handed in front of your patients. Antimicrobial resistance was estimated to be directly responsible for 1.27 million deaths globally in 2019 and was associated with an estimated 4.95 million deaths. So estimated as almost 5 million deaths, but definitely directly responsible. So it was a causal factor in other deaths as well, is the claim there. So infection prevention and microbial diagnosis, which help ensure patients receive the right antibiotics, are often not available in war zones, he wrote. And this is Dr. Azad and environmental contamination fuels the spread. Quote, the environments in conflict zones are heavily contaminated with explosive metabolites such as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, and heavy metals, which are drained into groundwater sources and mixed with soil, inducing multi-drug bacterial resistance, he said, adding that multi-drug resistance is driven by or cross-resistance through horizontal gene transfer between bacterial species or mutations, even at the sublethal doses of metals. So basically, what this is saying is, and this kind of spreads, is that the microbes and nasty germs and bacteria and viruses and whatever. I'm probably butchering this, but they develop a resistance due to their environmental or due to the environment of the battlefield. And they become therefore more dangerous. And as these microbes are brought back into hospitals around Europe, as Ukraine is going seek, medical help for their wounds and whatnot, then you have an issue of these sort of things spreading. So there's an interesting side effect to the of the war. Despite growing inefficiencies of antibiotics, the pipeline for bringing new antibiotics to the market is stagnant and lacks innovation, Jung said, adding that it's frustrating for clinicians working on antimicrobial resistance when they compare themselves with colleagues in cardiology and oncology who have access to new drugs and enter the market each year. You can also imagine that if that is my situation here in German tertiary care centre, it's even worse in many parts of the world, she said. And while the impact of the war in Ukraine is relevant to Europe, antimicrobial resistance spreads rapidly beyond borders. Nobody Nobody's safe until everybody is safe, said Dr. Martin Fitchett, a global head of global public health at Johnson & Johnson during the summit. So, yeah, interesting. Just something that I'd certainly not considered in a war. Okay, let's move on to war crime number X gazillion. So this is Russia just absolutely spamming a residential apartment block in Mariupol, so back in April, May, with a thermobaric rocket. These are the ones that absolutely incinerate everything inside, and it's a terrible way to go. The thermobaric weapons are pretty horrible. And you see the pictures of Mariupol now, and you think, yeah, okay, well, yeah, it's just one big war crime. Again, whose side are you supporting? Russia. I'll talk about the whole war crime thing later, actually. Okay, so Luxembourg, thank you, sending out Humvees that will strengthen Ukrainian exercising its right to self-defense. So they are providing, as the effectively smallest country in Europe, they are providing help to Ukraine. So that's fabulous. Norway to allocate nearly $200 million to Ukraine to help purchase gas. So in August, Norway announced it would help Ukraine increase its natural gas reserves before winter arrives. The gas will help alleviate the country's grave humanitarian situation, the government said. So that's really good, very needed help. This is well worth watching, or at least part of it. I will play to you. This is an interview and a little window into the activities of people operating MANPADS around Bakhmut. And I'll read everything out because I know some people just watch this, but Ukrainian unit explains how they shoot down Russian aircraft around Bakhmut. So someone firing a MANPAD. It's actually an Igla. We hear so often about Stingers and whatnot, but actually there's an awful lot of other kit that gets used. The Russian forces near Bakhmut are trying hard to advance, he says. Ukrainian soldiers say Russian aviation forces were here this morning. Ukrainian troops are ready to respond with MANPADS, man-portable air defense systems, at any moment. So what I find interesting looking at this is how battered and bruised this MANPAD is. That this has been used a lot, right? And they obviously have rockets made for it. It's not a fire and use it and chuck it away. It's not a disposable piece. This can obviously be used again and again. Does it weigh a lot? It weighs 18 kilograms. The user says. What weapon are you holding? It's a 9K38 Igla, a man-portable infrared homing surface-to-air missile. Have you already fired on any targets with it? Yes, I have. Can you tell us more? You spot an airplane flying, you press on this, you point it at the plane, it captures the signal, the missile comes out, and that's it. So obviously it gets a signal and then it locks on and you can shoot. So when the infantry shouts incoming and hides in the trenches, you have to run out and try to find the enemy's plane or aircraft. It doesn't matter if the enemy is shelling you or if it's calm. Your response has to be highly focused. And you have to have perfect sight and hearing to find a target at a distance of 3 to 5 kilometers. From the moment you've heard the sound to the moment you react, you literally have 3 to 5 seconds to run up and throw the MANPADS on your shoulder. Our targets are mainly the Su-20, the fighter bomber, and helicopters like the Mi-8, the Mi-8, which can attack many targets, the Mi-24 and the Kamov K-52. How often do they attack?
Ні-ні-ні.
Every day, sometimes a few times a day.
Буває по пару, ну, декілька разів на день.
So these guys are busy.
І ми все время стараємося учиться у врага
We are
по-тихому.
constantly trying to learn from our enemy. So I found this quite interesting. We watch videos they post, read books that they use, and in this way, we understand what tactics they can use here. They fly up to the contact line, put the plane or helicopter's nose up, attack, which means fire rockets, and try to leave the danger zone as quickly as possible. I've shown you videos of that. That means the time we can see them is reduced to 10 to 15 seconds. And during this time, we have to run out, point our weapon at the target, and launch the missile. So there you go. I thought that's just a nice little insight into what these guys do. I presume these guys are just hanging around in a spot that has been known to see activity over a certain time period with these MANPADS, all night, all morning, all day, or whatever, and just wait for that one moment. It might be just 15 seconds in a day. They have to be alert to, and then suddenly up, out, shoot, and hope that they bring something down. And talking about that, who would want to be? So these are Mi-8 helicopters, Mi-8 helicopters conducting a combat mission near Bakhmut. These are Ukrainian helicopters, but either side. Who would want to be operating in a helicopter in a war zone like that? It's just like, I wonder what the percentage chance of you coming back home is. Like, realistically, I'm going to go and fire off some rockets at the enemy in my helicopter. I've been told to do that. I'm going to fly there. What's the percentage chance I'm going to come back alive? Like, it might be like a 90% chance. You're thinking like 1 in 10 sorties get hit. Like, if I had to go to work in a day and it's like, oh, you've got a 5% chance of dying today in your job, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not sure that's a job for me, really. This is how brave these guys are. Just, yeah, anyway, worth thinking about. This is the opportunism of Turkey. So just in, Department of Defense calls out Turkey and Syria for hitting Kurdish forces in renewed hostilities. And this is a problem with Turkey being part of NATO, is that also they hate the Kurds. And actually the Kurds have helped out America. I mean, when, I don't want to have a go at Trump again, but he pulled out from helping the Kurds and left the Kurds to fend for themselves against Turkey. And part of this is trying to have sweet deals with Erdogan. And if you want to do sweet, this is the whole problem with NATO and getting Finland and Sweden into NATO, is that they held a veto and they said we won't let them in. See, Erdogan's pretty clever. He's canny. He's a canny operator. He has his feet in both sides of the fence, and he's playing one off of the other and getting the most out. He's providing weapons for Ukraine at the same time, taking loads of money from Russia. But he said, I don't want Finland and Sweden to come into NATO unless they say that Kurds are bad, basically, and they change their laws protecting Kurds, or they call these people terrorist groups, so on and so forth. It's all about hammering the Kurds. The Kurds have been our biggest allies in the West against the ISIS in the area in Syria, and against the Syrian regime. The Kurds are the ones doing the fighting. They're broadly a secular group of people. They're not like religious fundamentalists. These guys are decent communities fighting for their own kind of identity and for their own freedom, but also doing huge amounts of legwork for us, right? In terms of fighting ISIS. And the way we thank them is by pulling out and letting them get on with it. And they had loads of ISIS imprisoned who ended up having to be released, and all sorts of, or escaping, all sorts of terrible. We just didn't do a good thing in leaving the Kurds to get on with it. And now it's like, now we're kind of giving Turkey permission to go and hammer the Kurds, and it's just life is difficult and geopolitics is difficult. Trying to please one person to help in one way is detrimental in another way, and that's clearly what's going on here. So these actions threaten our shared goals, including to continue the fight against ISIS and make sure the group can never resurge. The Pentagon says. And yeah, it's Erdogan gets his way because he's in a real power position, because he knows that the West need him and need Turkey, and yet he has it in for the Kurds. So yeah, now's the time for them to hit, I guess. Okay, here are proximity ammunition with proximity fuses. Oh, I was going to show the video. I showed a video a couple of weeks ago of these Gepards, these autocannons firing in the night, and then I was saying these look like tracer bullets because they were kind of flaming, or you could see them in the night sky against these Shahed 136 drones. And someone said they could be proximity fuses, and now this is saying this seems to be the solution. It's proximity fuses. So these are rounds that explode when they get near to something. We've got proximity ammunition, which is a really impressive ability to sense a drone in flight and airburst at the precise moment to build a frag cone to be a one-shot, one-kill solution. So this is what they look like. It's pretty impressive footage, actually. So as it gets close to the drone, which is there, it explodes next to the drone, sending out this cone of explosive cone that just takes out the drone. I don't know how expensive those rounds are, and when you're a Gepard firing like all these like over and over, and God, I sounded like a kid then, firing out all of these rounds. Like if each of those rounds are expensive and you are laying the sky, you're putting these all over the sky in the hope that you hit a drone coming in, then it'll be interesting. But then if that drone is responsible for causing a huge amounts of damage financially and in human terms, then it's worth it. That's the war crime one I'm going to talk about probably in a separate video because I'm banging on too much here. Come on, fingers. My fingers aren't working very well here. Apologies. Right, so this is quite interesting. This video is doing the rounds. This is a Ukrainian. I'll turn the sound off now. That's a Ukrainian column of tanks. And you're thinking, well, first of all, where is this? Ones I've seen on have done hashtag Bakhmut, Svatova, and everywhere. And you're like, well, it can't be in both those places. So who knows where this is? But I'm quite interested in this. Is this just a column moving from one town to another to reinforce the town? Or is this a column going out on an offensive, and what does it look like for a column of tanks to do an offensive at the moment, and so on and so forth? So loads of questions about stuff like that. It's great to see though that amount of mechanized equipment for the Ukrainians. And here's another example of a column of stuff moving around. It's just a lot of stuff, right? But it's good to see that the Ukrainians have that amount of kit. I hate the fact that if you press it, the sound comes back on. And then just other stuff about this column moving, and they're cleaning their stuff with a Russian flag. But there you go. Again, these guys always look pretty well kitted out, don't they? Compared to many of the Russians we see. This is going to be my last one because I'm going to do a separate one, I think, on the war crime video, which is a much more depressing one than this. And I like to leave you guys on a positive. So here is my positive. Turn the sound off just in case I get a copyright infringement. But look at that. I mean, is this a wild bird? Surely it must be. Wow, it's incredibly tame. It's beautiful. It's a very healthy looking bird as well. Pretty big for its variety. Okay. There you go. I thought that was a nice way to end. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Hopefully this has been of interest to you. Please like, subscribe, share. You can support me in lots of ways. Buy me a coffee, PayPal, YouTube. Thanks are always really appreciated. Or you can pop along to uasupporter.com/ATP. And buying anything on this website will help out both reporting from Ukraine, and I get a little bit of a commission as well. Here are long sleeve t-shirts for women. If you want to show your support for Ukraine, here's a place to go. Lots of colors, lots of designs. Also, please check out my new YouTube channel. This one will not be on there, but my tomorrow's Ukraine War Extra video will go on ATP Geo. So that's Atypical Philosopher Geopolitics. It doesn't really come up on the search at the moment. It's a bit too young, but it is at ATP Geo if you do that after youtube.com/. So thank you. Take care. Speak to you tomorrow. Or actually speak to you later because I'm going to do a separate one on the claims of a war crime.